Praise be Jesus Christ. What a contrast there is with the glitter and the sparkling lights that start to show forth. In fact, some have shown even before Thanksgiving. And the first reading, or the gospel, I should say, the first readings that we have on the first Sunday of Advent. They do not speak of the beauty of Christmas. They don't even hint towards the coming feast of the Nativity of the Lord. But they speak of the chaos and the problems that happen and will happen at the end of the world. Always on the first Sunday of Advent, we hear of the last judgment, the last days. And they follow right up to the readings that we had just a few weeks before, because at the end of the liturgical season, they also turn to the end of the world, the end of life. And how ironic that right before that too, most likely by divine providence, we have the month of the Holy Souls, when we've been praying for our dead, who will not see the last days as we might. The living will see it. Those that have died will come back to life and see it. But they have already gone to their last day here on earth. That's a very sobering thought, or at least it should be. And yet, the psalmist says in today's psalm, "Teach me, O Lord, your ways." It's a sober reminder to me, I hope to you too, that the Lord has given us the way to prepare for the end of the world, for the end of our own life, and for the end of the lives of those we love. Because this world does pass away. It will at the end of time, but it will also pass away when our time comes to die. None of us will escape it. And it is important for us as the believers of Jesus to ponder this, to accept it, and to be the evangelists, the ones who go forth and proclaim it to the world. Isn't it ironic? I just heard on a conference given by Father Benedict Rochelle, we all did during our retreat, something that I had known but had forgotten. That about 150 years ago here in the United States, Christmas was not celebrated. The only ones that celebrated Christmas in the early 1800s were Roman Catholics and some Episcopals. December the 25th was a regular day of work. It was no holiday. Remember, our country was based on a lot of the puritanical, Puritan, Congregationalist type of religion, even though we claimed we were not a religious state. The only ones that had Christmas trees and lights and nativity scenes, again, were the Catholics and some Episcopals. I even remember as a child, most of my Protestant friends didn't go to church on Christmas. It's only recently they started to have Christmas Eve services. Oh, they remembered Christmas, and some had a tree and some had some lights, but not like we did. We can give credit to this big Christmas boom to Macy's. What's Macy's store in New York that started to start the Macy's parade to get people all psyched up to go shopping. And now what is Christmas? My goodness. My Hindu doctor puts up a Christmas tree. I asked him if they put up a nativity scene. He said, oh no. Of course, I also asked him because his wife is expecting and she's going to have the baby baptized. He was appalled. I know Jewish people to put up trees and lights and exchange gifts on Christmas. Everybody wants to be in the party. Is that what Christmas is? Or is it reclaiming who we are as disciples of Jesus Christ? That Christ came into this world to redeem us. And that is something to celebrate, yes. But it's also what Advent's about, a time to prepare by prayer, mortification, and reflection. You know, a friend of ours just a few weeks ago gave the brothers a poinsettia plant. Said, happy, a Catholic. I said to the brothers, don't you dare put that in the chapel or the little chapel in the monastery. I don't want to see that plant. It's not Christmas. Frankly, I don't like poinsettias, actually. They're just a bunch of weeds that have a nice color to them. But the person said, oh yes, we're supposed to be happy. Hallelujah, hallelujah, it's Christmas. Why didn't we sing the Gloria today? Why am I in violet vestments? The church has a whole other message, and you and I need to reclaim that. And you've heard me say that over and over, but I think it's becoming more acute. I was pondering recently this week, again through one of the conferences of Father Benedict Rochelle, the Virgin Martyrs of the Church. A lot of them are listed in Eucharistic Prayer 1, we'll do today. Felicity, Perpetua, Agatha, Lucy, Agnes, Cecilia, Anastasia. They weren't all Virgin Martyrs, but most of them. Perpetua was a married woman. Actually, she was pregnant when the wild bears and the lions ripped open her body and her baby. And Felicity was her maid. But Agnes was only about 12 years old. St. Ambrose says, you know, you look at a little 12-year-old girl, if you look at her cross-eyed, she starts crying. Well, I don't know, but I've heard a lot of mothers and fathers say that's true. That's a very sensitive time for a little girl. Well, Agnes was taken and stripped naked in a brothel to try to convert her to paganism. She said no. She was beheaded. And Lucy, stabbed in the throat and had her eyes plucked out. And Cecilia, I mentioned the other day, had her head half hacked off. We can go through the whole list of our martyrs. They just, last Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, we had St. Andrew Dunlop and his companions. I always feel sorry for the companions. They don't always list them, and I say, my goodness, they went through such a same amount of torture as the first guy. Some of them were burnt, some of them were hung, and some of them were beheaded. And I'm not sure if it was Andrew or another one named Andrew of that group. But I recently heard something that was very moving. We all know of Mary standing at the cross. But St. Andrew's mother crouched by the executioner's block so that she might receive his head when it was severed. What about the man who just saw Pope Francis and gave him a cross from a friend of his a young 20-year-old man who was asked by the radical Muslims ISIS group, told him his life would be taken if he would not convert, if he refused to convert to Muhammad. And he refused. A 20-year-old man, when young men are going dating, movies, video games, parties, school, future, was beheaded. Well, the question comes, maybe we won't be faced with things like that, but are we ready now? Are we ready to face Jesus? Are we really ready? Or are we going to give into that little attitude, oh, everybody's fine, unless you commit mass murder or molest children, you're just going to get to heaven just fine. Really? I think of my father, St. Augustine. He converted at the age of 33. Now, he lived a sinful life, yes, but he converted at 33. And when he was dying at 76, he asked the penitential psalms to be written out on the wall. You know those psalms like Miserere, have mercy on me, God, in your kindness, in your compassion, blot out all my sins, or out of the depth I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, spare my life. And while he was in his deathbed, lying on his deathbed, he wept for those sins that were long forgiven, because he knew before the intense love of God, he didn't measure up at all. I recently came across we became aware of the death of Father John Riccardo's mother. Now, Father John Riccardo is a priest in the Archdiocese of Detroit. He's pretty well known in some circles as a upcoming evangelist and preacher. He's quite dynamic, really. In fact, I one time mentioned to Father Tom that it would be good if they could bring him to St. Peter's. He has a great plan for parishes evangelizing their people and stirring them up to a vibrant lifestyle. He came from a very good family, Catholic family in Detroit, but he himself was almost like Augustine. He claimed that he was in some serious relationship for over 7 years, and he said we didn't act like an altar boy and a nun either. But he was then converted, went on to seminary, was ordained. And so when I heard about his mother's death, because one conference that he gave, I heard him talk about his mother who was very crippled and in a lot of pain and received a healing, miraculous healing, for about 20 years or so. I'm not sure the whole details now. They've faded from my memory. But anyway, she seemed like a remarkable woman because she was very dynamic when she was healed, and then didn't her disease come back in full force? And her attitude wasn't, why didn't it last? Or, woe is me, but, well, I guess God gave me this refreshment. Now I must suffer for him and for others. So I think I mentioned last week, because I don't always recall what I do, that for some reason I felt strongly called to leave a message on Father's voicemail that we here in the monastery were praying for him at the loss of his mother. And I was surprised and shocked, actually, when he called back to thank us. And in that conversation, I said to him something about, I believe your father's still living. He said, oh no, my father died 2.5 years ago, along with, and shortly after my brother. I didn't ask him any more details, but ironically this past week, just yesterday, I came across an old conference again of his. And it actually was a homily given at his father's funeral. His father died on February the 13th, 2016, 2.5 years before his mother. They had been married 66 years. He was 91 years old. And of course, everybody speaks so well, at least when you get to that stage in your life of your parents, but certainly Father John, his father must have been a great hero for him. And it was no secret that Father Ricardo's own family came from a great deal of wealth. His father was the CEO and the chief board of directors of Chrysler Corporation in Detroit. But he said his father always put God first, his beloved wife and children second, and his work third. And he said in spite of his position, he was one of the most humble men he knew. Even when Chrysler went through great crisis in the 70s, his father never missed Mass and never missed daily Mass. And never missed the time in the morning and the evening to pray. He always spent a great deal of time in their parish, helping with the poor and leading people in Catholic instructions. And he said, my father, he could have had a beautiful death by dying right after he went to Mass or coming out of the confessional or with his whole family around his bedside. But he always told his children, be vigilant because it will come when you don't expect it. His father was with his grandson at a basketball game when God called him and he slumped over into his grandson's arms. And Father John said, that would be so typical of my father. That everything in life was blessed and holy and good because God came first. Stay vigilant, said Father. And at the end of that homily, the announcer said, and 40 days to that day, another one of his sons, Peter, died. So Father lost both parents and a brother in 2.5 years. But I couldn't help but think, like Lucy and Agnes, like Andrew, St. Andrew, or like the man in Iraq, maybe this family didn't go through martyrdom or torture or suffering. In fact, they lived a very American first world life. But God was first. And they were ready. My question is, am I ready? My question to you is, are you ready? We don't know if we'll be here at Christmas. And doesn't our world need to see again and learn from us? If it learned how to put up the Christmas lights from us, maybe it should learn from us why those Christmas lights are up. That we really do believe that Christ is the light in the midst of darkness. And in a world that's so messed up, it doesn't know what it's doing. Do you know there's a case in Texas right now? You can Google it. It's called Save James. A little 6-year-old boy has been made a pawn by his parents in a divorce. The mother is a pediatrician. She wants James to be her daughter, Luna. That's appropriate. Looney Tune. The court, the civil court, that's out after every priest because of abuse, has ordered the father to always have dresses on hand for James when he visits him. And little James, the last time he was visiting with his father, took a pair of scissors and cut the dress up. Don't you women get any ideas from this? Because he said, I don't want to dress like a girl. I'm a boy. What a sick world. So when we put those lights up, let's not just think that they're there for color. And we're there just to join in the eggnog celebration. We're standing for something. That Jesus is the light that dispels all darkness. And let us be vigilant. Let us not just put up electric lights, but let the light of Christ shine through us. So whether we're at a party or shopping or in the chapel at prayer, just like Mr. Ricardo, we're ready to go home when he calls each one of us.